The Giants started Daniel Jones after a week of wondering about his hamstring. It didn't end well today. They are still in the mix to win the division. That's the good news. But any pipe dream of sneaking in as a wild card, that likely evaporated in a loss to the Cardinals. So what happened? In times like these, we turn to Pat Leonard. Pat Leonard from the Daily News had the pleasure of covering this one today at MetLife. Pat, thanks so much for joining us. I think the obvious is after watching this, Daniel Jones probably shouldn't have started this game. We have the benefit of hindsight, but I think the question that needs to be asked, whether it's fair or not, is did Daniel Jones really need to start this game, or did the Giants make a mistake? Do they have any regrets about this?
No, I think it's a fair question, John. And Joe Judge said that he didn't regret starting Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones said that he did not regret pushing to start in this game after only a one-game absence. However, when you watch the result and you listen to Jones talk after the game about how not only was his hamstring bothering him late, he also mentioned bumps and bruises that had to be evaluated afterwards. In fact, his Zoom interview was delayed. Not sure if he had some other injury checked out, but he wouldn't answer no to that question. He did say he thinks that he will be available to play in the Giants' next game against the Browns. But when you look at how they functioned or did not as an offense, and you see that they need to be a power running team that keeps games close, they have to win the turnover battle. And when the game starts with Daniel Jones immobile, a missed assignment on protection, and him putting the ball on the ground, suddenly you say to yourself, is he a liability?
Daniel Jones is a quarterback that relies on his legs as much as he does his arm. And when that was taken away from him today, it was pretty obvious that he was a totally different quarterback back there. I don't know. Does that raise any red flags to you going forward? Bigger picture with Daniel Jones. Did this expose something about him?
It is discouraging that when Daniel Jones could not maneuver around and he was turned into a pocket passer, that he played this poorly. They didn't even cross midfield until about 7 minutes left in the third quarter. Leading receiver is Golden Tate with 39 yards on one catch. And so it shouldn't be that bad. Not to mention that Joe Judge said going into the game, he and Daniel Jones had several long conversations, and Jones was aware that he couldn't open it up and run like he used to. And so the way he needed to play was, if a sack is there, take it, protect the ball. If the throw's not there, throw the ball away. Live to see another day. Let the Giants defense handle the heavy lifting and just don't lose the game for your team. When we look ahead with what goes on with the Giants now, I think there have to be serious question marks if you're Joe Judge about whether to play him against Cleveland, not just because of his health, but because below 100% now, you see Daniel Jones making poor decisions. They weren't even scoring a lot of points when he was healthy. Now look at how he's playing now, below 100%, not able to use his legs.
And to be fair, he didn't exactly have a strong performance in front of him with the offensive line. They played one of their worst games in recent memory, and they had been trending in the right direction. They were a big reason around this Giants 4-game winning streak. What did you see from the offensive line today that maybe raises a red flag?
Well, discouraging that they couldn't control the ball on the ground the way they did against Seattle with the same group, of course, with Wayne Gallman running behind them. But the pass protection is what really stood out. And really, there were breakdowns all over the place. Kevin Zeitler on stunts, Cam Fleming beaten once, Andrew Thomas beaten twice by Hassan Reddick, who ends up with 5 sacks, which is a Cardinals franchise record, by the way. And, you know, all of that comes together in this, John, is that the Giants are still a rebuilding team. And I think we get really excited here in New York talking about when they went on a 4-game winning streak and then they beat the Seahawks, which was really, let's be honest, their best win in 4 years. And everyone gets really excited. And I'm excited to be covering a team that's winning more games. But this game brings us back to reality with what this team really is, in my opinion, which is a team that's rebuilding with a lot of young players, and they're imperfect. And so when you play a good team and you make mistakes, they will not only make you pay, but they could even embarrass you. And I think that's what happened with the Giants offensive line here.
To make matters worse, the Giants happen to lose on a day when the rest of the division wins. Not ideal, obviously. And they take a step back. Well, Washington and Dallas and Philly all take a step forward. That has to hurt the Giants' playoff chance. I mean, we know the wild card is probably not a realistic thing, but division-wise, it definitely hurts them today.
No doubt, especially with the Eagles having a tie going back to the early season with the Bengals. Washington, of course, is playing the better ball in the division. Their defense is probably the best unit in the division on all 4 teams. But, of course, they lose Alex Smith. So is Dwayne Haskins the guy? That's why there's still uncertainty and there's still a chance the Giants do it. But frankly, John, I think Joe Judge has a really tough decision here, is that He needs to decide if Colt McCoy needs to play against the Cleveland Browns and if he can generate the same type of safe game plan that keeps them in it to the end. He said something going into this Cardinals game that resonated with me. He said, listen, we're the kind of team that needs to keep it close and win in critical situations. They're not going to score a lot of points. They're not going to be the better team on the field for the full 4 quarters. But if they are disciplined and they force turnovers and they don't give the ball away themselves, they have Graham Gano. They have the type of special teams unit that has struggled of late, but should be able to get it done. I think Baltimore and Cleveland coming up are 2 games that you cannot expect them to win. I frankly think that week 17, we all hate the NFC East and how bad it is. Week 17, we got Washington against the Eagles.
Yeah.
We got the Giants against the Cowboys. I think the biggest drama is going to be the worst division in football come that final week of the regular season.
Oh, January 3rd is going to be a big night for the NFC East. You got that Giants-Cowboys game circled on the calendar. Who knows? That could come down to the division. No doubt.
And, Dallas, as bad as they are, they get a win over a Bengals team that the Giants also got a victory over. And even though they're terrible and everyone's calling for Mike McCarthy's job, they're still in it. They're only 1 game behind the Giants with a game to play against them. And they've already beaten the Giants once head to head. And that's how quickly these things can turn. And that's why I think it's important that we outside keep a level head about what the Giants' expectations are. But internally, the Giants just can't overreact to this, right? They can't overreact to how flat they came out in this game. They need to just stick to what their identity is and not play outside of themselves. But, John, I'm worried. I'm worried about Daniel Jones's health. I'm worried about the fact that they came out so flat offensively. And frankly, against the Browns team that runs the ball down people's throats, against the Ravens team that runs the ball down people's throats, I'm not quite sure the Giants will be able to control the ball on the ground themselves and control those games as well.
So that means we're going to be keeping our eyes on Daniel Jones' every move in practice for a 2nd straight week now. I had best guess after what you saw today and what you heard today from Daniel Jones, do you think Daniel Jones makes the start a week from tonight, Sunday night against the Browns?
Yeah, John, I don't think he started. It seemed like they were looking at more than just his hamstring after the game. You could tell Jones wasn't going to divulge what it was, but when he was asked point blank if that was the case, clearly he didn't want to lie. So he said it was my hamstring and some bumps and bruises. And so we don't know if there's an ankle or something else going on his other leg or something else that's bothering him, but he certainly was laboring way more in the 4th quarter than he was in the previous 3. And that's why he ends up coming out for Colt McCoy. We know from our experience now that Jones is going to push to play. I think there were people in the organization that were pushing for him to play. Joe Judge was extremely cautious, though. And I think Judge, coming off of what he just saw and how Jones put the ball on the deck 3 times in that game, I frankly think he's going to put McCoy back in for another week and try to win with a more conservative game plan, and then hopefully get Jones healthier for those final 2.
All right, we shall see. Pat Leonard, thanks so much for the time.
You got it, John.
So next weekend, there's the possibility Colt McCoy will be facing his old team as the Giants are in primetime right here on NBC4 New York. It is the G-Men and the surging Cleveland Browns on NBC's Sunday Night Football. All starts with Football Night in America at 7, and then we will be here to break down the game afterwards on Sports Finals.